Secretary introduce the guest, and at the same time, after that, proceed to. We don't have to swear them in. This is an investigation.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Our guest for today, we have from the OGCC, the Office, Government Corporate Counsel, Office of the Government Corporate Counsel, Justice Elpidio A. Vega.
Can you raise your hand, please, so I can recognize you? You're too far. Can you make it closer? Thank you. Justice Vega.
We have the Deputy Government Corporate Counsel, Justice Marilyn G. Estaris.
Marilyn Estaris. Can you raise your hand, please? Mrs. Estaris. Raise your hand, please, so I can recognize you. Thank you. Thank you.
Assistant Government Corporate Counsel, Judge Alda G. Reyes.
Judge Reyes, please. Okay, thank you.
Assistant Government Corporate Counsel, Judge Maria Romelina T. Apostol.
Good morning, sir.
Where are you, Judge Apostol? Can you raise your hand, please? Kindly raise your hand, please. Thank you. You sent me an emoji.
Good morning, sir. I'm sorry, sir.
Government Corporate Attorney Manuel F. Santos Jr.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Government Corporate Attorney Owen M. Vidad.
Okay. All right.
From the DOJ, we have State Counsel Attorney Analisa C. Ite Manito.
Yes. Go ahead.
From the GSIS, sir, from Legal Services, Attorney Giovanni Lin M. Kikoy Marin.
Where is she? Is she there? Yeah.
Attorney Marin.
Attorney Marin? I see her. Yes, Attorney Marin. I see her name, but can you all please turn on your video so we can see you? Please go ahead. Attorney Marin? Is that you?
Ano pa nito? John de la
Attorney Marin? Can you just leave your video on? Anyway, you put your lipstick on already. Okay. Next.
From the Office of the Solicitor General, sir, we have Attorney Eric Remigio Panga, sir. Assistant Solicitor General.
Attorney Panga, are you there? Attorney Panga, this one.
Good morning, Your Honors. I'm present.
Where are you? You have to raise your hand and you have to turn on video. Turn on your video.
Yeah.
All right. All right.
This is me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors.
Sir, that's all for our guests for the OGCC bill, sir.
All right. The rest will be called later. So we are taking up the OGCC first. I'd like to thank and recognize Senator Drilon, the most assiduously hardworking senator, former Senate President, and I'm not used to calling people who have done well former, because they're once a Senate President, always a Senate President. Today we're going to discuss two important matters. First, on the strengthening of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel, or the OGCC. The following are the bills under consideration for the first part of the hearing. This has already been approved on third reading by the House under House Bill number 9088 on June 2, 2021, and received by the Senate on 3 June 2021. And then there are bills 912, 963, 1029. These were all bills filed by Senator Bong Revilla, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Vicente Soto, and Senate Bill number 1310, introduced by Senator Ronaldo Bato de la Rosa. As stated, for order and expediency, we will divide the hearing in two parts. First part will be about the OGCC, and the second part will be the grant of survivorship benefits to the beneficiaries of the deceased retired member of the National Prosecutorial Service. For this purpose, guests for the second hearing will be at the Zoom waiting room while the hearing on the first part is going on. Okay, I guess we can begin. As we all know, the OGCC is asking to strengthen their office and at the same time increase their salaries. And at the same time, they're also asking for additional personal benefits and privileges. I guess that we can expound on that. So I will pause now and give the Senator Dillon the benefit of sharing his wisdom right away. Senator Dillon, if you have any questions, I'll let you proceed right away, and I'll ask. There are only two of us. We have a quorum, so go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we, on our part, welcome the OGCC family in this hearing this morning. I have no questions on our preliminary statement, Mr. Chair. I would rather listen to the presentation of the OGCC and ask questions later, if need be.
Presentation of the OGCC. May I know who is going to present for the OGCC on your proposals?
I am the Government Corporate Counsel, LPG Vega. I'll be presenting the OGCC strengthening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and a very pleasant good morning to you as well.
With your permission, Senator Gordon and Senator Dillon, these Senate bills 912, 963, 1029, and 130 are all entitled the strengthening of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel and the rationalizing and further professionalizing its organization, upgrading positions, and appropriating funds therefore. The growth in the number of government corporations, which is now in the number of 732, coupled with the complexities of their requirements brought by modern business situations and conditions, the substantial increase in the request for legal services of the OGCC, not only in terms of volume, but also in the nature of the services required, calls for this corresponding strengthening of the OGCC structure. In line with the national government's thrust to standardize and rationalize the current compensation framework in the bureaucracy, it is high time for the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel to have its new charter to be at par with its counterparts in the Department of Justice. All the counterparts of the OGCC, such as the OSG, the National Prosecution Services, and the Public Attorney's Office, and the attached agencies of the Department of Justice, performing similar functions and legal services as the OGCC has been granted new charters. In fact, our charter EO 878 has been promulgated in 1983, and this leaves us 38 years of this charter, which is, we think, is already not capable of meeting the needs of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel in its service as the principal and statutory law office of government-owned controlled corporation, subsidiaries, the GFIs, corporate offsprings, and the government corporate entities.
Sundan nyo nga. Saan yung...
As to the history of the OGCC, it began in 1935. Thus, as of now, we are going on 86 years, and we just celebrated our 85th last year. The different laws on the OGCC pursuant to RA 3838, RA 6000, PD 1415, EO 878, EO 29, and EO 299 defined and reiterated its powers and function as the OGCC is primarily mandated as the statutory legal counsel and principal office of government corporations and GCEs. The first function of the OGCC is to serve as the principal law office. As counsel, it is inescapable duty of the OGCC to represent government corporations and GCEs in cases for or against them, regardless of the nature of the cases or the strength of the legal positions of the government corporate counsel, of the government corporations and GCEs. Second, to control and supervise the legal department served as its in-house counsel when there is none. This obligation of the OGCC is corollary to the acknowledged benefits of having legal department in a government corporation and GCEs, the control and supervision of the GCE's legal department. In various corporations also, there are no plantilla positions for lawyers, and where such positions are vacant, it is the OGCC that serves as the in-house counsel. This arrangement has actually saved the government corporations from exorbitant amount that will be spent for hiring private counsel or law firms. The OGCC is also mandated to arbitrate issues which might arise between government corporations in government corporations and GCEs. And under the Uniform Rules on Dispute Resolution promulgated by the DOJ, the OGCC handles arbitration cases between government corporations. As the principal law office exercising control and supervision of the legal departments, the OGCC shall have the following powers and duties: represent the government corporations in litigation of appropriate cases brought before courts and quasi-judicial bodies in the Philippines or abroad, review contracts referred by government corporations, and render legal opinions on important legal questions referred by the government corporations and GCEs. And when the exigency of the service requires, any member of the legal staff may also be assigned or designated to a government corporation to perform additional and special tasks, as may be determined by the government corporate counsel. It conducts periodic performance audit over legal departments of government corporations, conciliate, mediate, act as hearing officers, or adjudicate disputes between government corporations and GCEs, investigate and hear administrative disciplinary cases, and conduct finding and preliminary investigations in referred cases by GCEs. We act also as corporate secretary and be assigned as technical members of technical working groups for GC's projects. We are also assigned and detailed to the government corporations to attend meetings, represent the OGCC in governing boards and management committee of the GCs and GCEs, review and approve engagement of private counsels, and perform such other functions. During the pre-pandemic and pandemic period, we are glad to give the comparison between this particular function of OGCC. For the year 2019, the cases carried over from the previous year was 4,949 cases, with 332 additional new cases referred. 282 of the cases were finally decided. 171 cases were won by OGCC, while 111 were unfavorable decisions. For the year 2020, OGCC started with 4,999 cases, and during the first year of the pandemic, 1,552 cases, new cases, were referred to the OGCC. 156 cases were finally decided within the year, leaving 6,395 cases by the end of the year. Out of the 156 cases, 94 cases were won while 62 cases were lost. As of June 15, 2021, the current cases of OGCC has reached 6,959, with 121 cases finally decided and 69 of which are favorable decisions and 52 unfavorable decisions. The other function of the OGCC is rendering legal opinions and also issuing contract reviews. This process has been certified, ISO certified. It has a mandated timeline which not only facilitates prompt and efficient action on the request from client corporations, but also complies with the requirement of RA 11032, or Ease in Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act of 2019. The OGCC has a timeline of 20 working days within which to release legal opinions and contract reviews. This process is known as the receipt to release process. It is reckoned from the receipt of such request for legal opinions or contract review. As shown in the table, OGCC's accomplishment in terms of contract reviews during the pre-pandemic year of 2019, OGCC had 86% completion rate, while the ISO R2R cycle compliance was 84%. The total request for the contract review from client reached 1,252. OGCC released 1,076 contract reviews, 903 of which are ISO R2R cycle compliant. All contract reviews contain directives on compliance with the applicable laws and with some revisions and modifications, terms and conditions in order to protect the client's interest. In 2020, during the pandemic, the OGCC had 1,839 requests for contract review. OGCC completed 92% of the requests, or a total contract review of 1,691 contracts, which the OGCC has reviewed. And this was the highest for said year and for all the years before. As of June 15, 2021, OGCC has 897 requests for contract review. 772 contracts have been reviewed and released, with 702 ISO R2R compliant. The completion rate is at 86%. With regards to legal opinion in 2019, as shown in the table, there were 438 requests from its clients. 376 opinions have been rendered, or 85% completion rate. 315 or 84% of which are ISO R2R cycle compliant. In 2020, during the pandemic, there were 391 requests for legal opinions received from clients. Out of the 447 requests in 2020, OGCC rendered 406 legal opinions, or 91% completion rate, with 80% of 324 opinions compliant with the ISO R2R cycle. As of June 15, 2021, the request for legal opinion totaled 309, out of which 193 has been released, or 62% completion rate, and 127 or 66% compliant with the ISO R2R cycle. As to the other functions of the OGCC, on top of litigation, review of contracts and revisions of legal opinions, the legal staff render a wide array of legal services to its clients. For instance, the OGCC exercises control and supervision of the legal department of all GCs, government corporation, and GCEs, and conduct periodic performance audit of lawyers and legal departments. It adjudicates dispute between GCs. It represents GC and GCEs in both domestic and international commercial arbitration. And also it investigates administrative disciplinary cases against employees of government corporation. OGCC also acts as corporate secretaries, join as members of technical working groups, bids and awards committees, and other committees in relation to the projects of government corporations. In relation to its litigation function or handling of cases, it continuously files pleadings and motions in courts, quasi-judicial bodies, and arbitral tribunals, attend hearings or video conference hearings during the pandemic period, prepare judicial affidavits and witness statements, attend case conference with client officials, and prepare case status report. As to the highlights of the Senate bills, the expansion of the office or increase in the number of lawyers and administrative staff is necessary to handle and address the increased legal requirements. With the growth in the number of GOCCs coupled with complexities of their requirements, the increase in the request for legal services, not only in terms of volume, but also in the nature of the services required, the same calls for the corresponding strengthening of the OGCC structure. Under the Senate bills, additional lawyers and members of administrative staff will be provided to address continuously increasing legal requirements of its client corporation. The bills provide 24 additional permanent members of the legal staff from existing 57 to the proposed 81 lawyers. As shown in the table, these additional personnel are as follows: 2 additional assistant government corporate counsel from the existing 10 to the proposed 12. 6 additional corporate attorneys or GCA4 from 10 to 16. 5 additional GCA3 from 14 to 19. 3 additional government corporate attorneys 2 from 17 to 20, and 8 additional GCA1 from 4 to 12. As shown in the next table, the total number of OGCC legal administrative personnel will increase by 105 from the current 135 to the proposed 240. As discussed, the permanent legal staff will increase by 24 from the current 57 to the proposed 81, while the permanent administrative staff will increase by 77 from 73 to 77. As to the non-permanent legal and non-legal personnel, which comprise the GCC's confidential staff, an additional 4 legal staff is being proposed, bringing up to their total to 9. At present, the positions and salary grades in the OGCC compared in their counterparts with the OSG, the National Prosecution Service, and the PAO are shown in the succeeding tables. As previously explained, the GCC's rank emoluments and privileges are already equivalent to that of the CA presiding justice by virtue of aforementioned EO 878 and 299. However, as shown in the table, the GCC at present has only the same level of salary grade 30 as that of an Assistant Solicitor General of the OSG, who holds the rank of a CA Associate Justice. Meanwhile, the Prosecutor General and the Chief Public Attorney, which also hold the rank equivalent to CA Presiding Justice, have a better compensation package than that of the Government Corporate Counsel, considering that while they are assigned salary grade 30, their entry level starts at step 8. As for the Deputy Government Corporate Counsel, her rank emoluments and privileges must be equivalent to that of a CA Associate Justice under EOs 878 and 299. However, as shown in the table, the Deputy Government Corporate Counsel does not receive the same salary grade level, salary grade 30, as that of an Assistant Solicitor General of the OSG, who likewise holds the rank of the CA Associate Justice. Instead, she receives a lower salary grade of SG 29 only, similar to that of an Assistant Government Corporate Counsel, Senior State Solicitor, Prosecutor 4, and Public Attorney 4. Third, we have the upgrading of the AGC, the Assistant Government Corporate Counsel's rank and salary grade. With regards to the upgrading of the AGCC position, the proposed measure seeks to make this position at par with those of their counterparts in the OSG. For instance, the AGC has the same functions as those of an ASG, specifically being a team leader, supervising a group of lawyers who render legal and other services to assigned government corporations in the case of OGCC and to the line agencies in case of OSG. Yet, as shown in the table 14, the rank of an AGCC is only equivalent to that of an RTC judge, while an ASG holds the rank of a CA Associate Justice. Fourth, the upgrading of GCA's rank and salary grade. The same is true with regards to those occupying the positions of GCA 1 to 4. Notwithstanding that they have the same qualifications and functions as those of their counterparts in the OSG, as shown in the table, they occupy one rank lower. From the table, it can be seen that a senior state solicitor, who is next in rank to an ASG, has the rank of an RTC judge with SG 29. On the other hand, a government corporate attorney 4, who is next in rank to an assistant government corporate counsel, has the rank of an MTC judge with salary grade 28. Consequently, those next in rank to senior state solicitor, from state solicitor 2 down to associate solicitor 2 as the higher assistant solicitor 1, has the higher rank than their counterparts in the OGCC from GCA 3 down to GCA 1. Thus, the proposal of the Senate bills is to address the present situation and upgrade the SG, the salary grade of the GCC and the Deputy Government Corporate Counsel, as well as the ranks and salary grades of the Assistant Government Corporate Counsels and the Government Corporates Authority 1 to 4 to make them at par with their counterparts in the OSG. The adjustment in ranks vis-a-vis their equivalent ranks in the judiciary and the salary grade of the legal staff as shown in the table. Next is the adjustment of the allowance and additional benefits for employees. The inclusion of benefits and allowances in the Senate bill seek to achieve parity in terms of the benefits currently being received by the OGCC and other similar agencies. The inclusion of benefits and allowance in the Senate bills seek to achieve parity in terms of benefits currently being received by OGCC and other similar agencies. In fact, the OSG, NPS, and PAO have similar benefits and allowances in their respective charters and have been enjoying them for a good number of years. The charters of OSG and NPS, OSG and PAO were promulgated in 2007, while the National Prosecution Service in 2010. The benefits and privileges also for employees. For instance, the OSG employees enjoy under its charter the following benefits: health care, accident insurance, and provident fund. Thus, the above benefits were also included in the proposed OGCC charter for the OGCC personnel to enjoy. Next is the special allowances. Similarly, lawyers in the OSG, NPS, and PAO are entitled to receive special allowances amounting to up to 100% of their basic salaries under their respective charters, as shown in the table. Next is the authority to disburse and use special assessments. Another important feature of the Senate bills is that they provide a specific provision on the authority of the OGCC to disburse and use special assessment it is authorized to make on its client government corporations. With this feature, OGCC will now have an important source of additional funds which it can utilize to meet obligations, contingencies, as well as to upgrade facilities and equipment. Thus, it is significant to note that the implications on the national budget if the Senate bills are passed into law will be very minimal. It must be noted that the OGCC has one of the lowest annual agency budgets in government, which for this year amounted to just almost 203.67 million. In fact, for the last 5 years, the OGCC's average annual agency budget amounted to only 189.06 million. As shown in the table, OGCC's comparative annual agency budget for the years 2016 to 2022 are as follows: 98.75 million in 2016, 125 million in 2017, 131.77 million in 2018, 221.71 million in 2019, 193.74 million in 2020, 203.67 million in 2021, and for Tier 1 proposal, 194.41 million in 2022. The average annual budget for 2018 to 2022 amounting to 189.6 pesos million pesos, as shown in the table, can be broken down as follows. The average annual personal services of 160.47 million, average annual maintenance and operating expenses of 23.18 million, and average annual capital outlay of 5.4 million. Moreover, as estimated, the total increment under the proposed Senate bills will amount to 206.71 million. Of the total increment, the amount of 133.37 million will be allocated for the increased compensation due to the adjustments in the salary structures of the present personnel complement and increase in the number of lawyers and members of administrative staff. Thus, as shown in the table, the estimated budget for Senate bills will amount to 375.84 million compared to the 2022 Tier 1 budget of 194.41 million. Hence, the increment of 206.71 million. The savings generated by the OGCC from the government corporations amounts to at least 1 billion pesos. Indeed, the fees of private law firms and individual lawyers for all services rendered by the OGCC to the government corporations are way above the proposed increased budget should the proposed OGCC charter be passed and enacted into law. The average current retainer acceptance fees of leading Metro Manila law firms amount to about 1 million, exclusive of time charges billed by individual lawyers and out-of-pocket expenses. In other cases, private law firms would bill professional fees in dollars. In arbitration cases alone, law firms charge tens of millions of pesos and millions in dollars and in the handling of cases. With the office expanded and personnel augmented under the proposed bills, the OGCC can further increase its productivity in providing the legal services to the government corporations. With the increasing growth of the GOCC sector, the savings of government would approximately amount to 1 billion pesos per year. Thus, with the foregoing, we earnestly implore your approval of the following Senate bills. Senate Bill 912, filed by Senator Ramon Bong Revilla. Senate Bill 963, filed by Senator Sonny Angara. Senate Bill 1029, filed by the Senate President Vicente C. Soto. And Senate Bill 1310, filed by Ronald Bato de la Rosa. To be sure, the four bills will ensure that the OGCC will further improve its services to the government corporate sector, in particular, and to the Filipino people. In general, to the provision of legal services to hundreds of government corporations by enabling them to discharge their respective mandates as catalysts of the country's economic growth within the bounds of law and at minimal cost. Thank you very much.
Senator Dillon, would you like to start, or would you like?
Mr. President, before we recognize Senator Dillon with the permission of our minority floor leader, I just want to record my presence to this meeting.
Yes, I asked Senator Subiri. Thank you, Senator Subiri, for coming, as well as Senator Tolentino.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm present.
Attorney Cayosa.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman. Thank you very much.
Senator Frank?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there new functions being proposed in the measure, Mr. Chair? Are there new functions of the OGCC being proposed in this new new bill or in this bill, or are we simply codifying the existing powers of the OGCC, which are scattered under the different statutes?
As far as I know, there are no additional functions, Senator.
Yes,
It is really, I was going to ask you, my first question is that really the intent of the bill is to put everybody at par with the like agencies, and it doesn't deal with the performance, it doesn't deal with additional functions, which we should ask. I mean, I have some questions to serve later on. Go ahead, please.
yes. So to our chief of office, confirmed that there are no additional functions being granted to the OGCC under this proposed measure.
Mr. Chair, the functions being enumerated are already provided for under the different laws. But now we are now going to at least put them in one law for a detailed functions of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel.
Now, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Concerned about the duplication of area that I would like to get the view. In terms of opinion making, there appears to me that in the present structure in government, there are three offices who can render opinions. You have the legal service, you have the OSG, and you have the OGCC insofar as the government corporations are concerned. Recently, we came to know of an opinion rendered by the OSG for PAGCOR concerning the tax structure for POGOs. Yes, can we get a clarification on the from the resource persons on exactly where we are today, and is there any recommendation that we should include in the OGC charter any provision which would clarify, which to me, which would clarify with these overlapping functions, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Chair, Mr. Attorney Vega.
Yes, thank you. The functions that should be included in these Senate bills should specifically delineate the functions of opinion making and handling of litigation and contract reviews of the government corporations. For that matter, Mr. Chairman, the opinion rendered by OSG at that time was, I think, the consequence of the former GCC not in consonance with the client corporation or PAGCOR.
Well, being not in consonance, it does not justify the transfer of the jurisdiction insofar as opinion making is concerned. That's really unacceptable in my humble view. Would you therefore recommend that the proposed charter of the OGCC include a provision which will clearly delineate the functions of the three law offices of the government insofar as, for example, opinion making? Professionally provide that only the opinion, say, of whoever, the OJ, OGCC, for etc., would be binding on everyone.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think it would be proper that the delineation of this function be stated in this charter, because the following functions which we have enumerated here are already given to us by different laws issued for OGCC, including EOs. That is why.
Why is it? Yeah.
That is why.
So why is it that OSG still rendered an opinion insofar as PAGCOR was concerned? PAGCOR is an GOCC.
Yes, Mr. Chair, but I think they, on this matter, I think they preferred to get the OSG opinion at that time.
Again, Attorney Vega, it's not a question of preference. Otherwise, you'll be forum shopping. If you cannot get a favorable opinion from the legal staff of the Department of Justice, you will go to OGCC. If you cannot get a favorable opinion from the OGCC, you go to OSG. That situation cannot be tolerated because you are all lawyers for the government, and each one, each agency, and their by the public. So let's let a language the different making is concerned, so that only one opinion will be followed. If you can suggest language, I would be interested. Will submit to the committee first opinion making is concerned.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will provide the language for that to avoid any of those kind of forum shopping and referrals of government corporations.
And in that particular case of the OSG, it's even particularly would issue opinions for the POGO. So I think that caused a lot of concern to us who are in the legal profession. What about, so you will submit a provision along that line, Mr. Corporate Government Counsel?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will emphasize on the delineation of these functions in order that there'll be no more the same forum shopping as given example here, Mr. Chair.
Now, all right, that should settle it. What about in terms of representation in court? When does the OSG, except in criminal cases, where the National Prosecution Service would have control and supervision over prosecution of criminal cases, what about in between the OSG and the GOCC, insofar as the civil and administrative aspects are concerned? Is this clear insofar as the delineation of functions is concerned?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The delineation is clear as between government corporations and agencies handled by the Office of the Solicitor General.
Can you state the rule? Are you on the first level courts or are you on appeal? Who has jurisdiction? Just for my information.
We handle all the legal cases for litigation of the government corporations, whether it is in the lower courts or in the upper courts.
Okay, so the OSG cannot assert jurisdiction over appealed cases notwithstanding their charter. Is that a correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, can you hire private counsel? Or what is your authority? First, government corporations, GOCCs, can they hire private counsel? And or what is the role of the OGCC insofar as hiring of private counsel is concerned?
Mr. Chair, insofar as the hiring of private counsels by the government corporations, it is generally prohibited. And it is only in exceptional cases where where the hiring of the private counsels are allowed. But it has to be with the OGCC's concurrence and with the COA's approval.
Is that in your charter right now, or is that by practice, or is that by policy?
It's not in our charter EO 878, but it is contained in memorandum circulars issued by the Office of the President and also of the COA rules and regulations.
You recommend that we incorporate those circulars in the law so that there can be more stability?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think that is appropriate since this particular concurrence necessary for the hiring of private counsels by our office and by the COA should be stated not only in memorandum circulars or COA rules, but also in our charter.
Yeah, allow me to clarify, Mr. Chair. First, the GOCCs, can they hire private counsel with the concurrence? Can they? GOCC, government-owned and controlled corporations. Question, can they hire private counsel with the concurrence of OGCC?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes or
They
no?
can hire private counsels with the concurrence of OGCC and the COA.
Okay. Well, I don't know why COA, because COA is only post-audit. Anyway, now, insofar as the OGCC itself is concerned, can you hire private counsel? Your office yourself.
The office does not hire any private counsel, and we do not hire any private counsel as we are not allowed to do so.
Are not allowed to hire the services of private counsel to assist you in the work assigned to you by. Is that correct? Mr. Vega,
I beg your pardon, sir.
you are not, OGCC is not allowed to hire the services of a private counsel to assist OGCC in providing legal services to GOCCs. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We do not hire private counsels to assist the GOCCs. It is the government-owned and controlled corporation which hires private counsel, but with our concurrence.
Yes. You would not recommend any change in that policy?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but we want this particular requirement of our concurrence be included in the charter.
Yeah. Okay. So you want that codified, that power of concurrence,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
but you have no problems with maintaining the present setup that you yourself as OGCC are not allowed to hire private counsel in behalf or private counsel to assist you in the performance of your cases.
Ano section yan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, because that is precisely the role of the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel. And in such way, as a consequence, we are saving government savings or amounts because of the hiring of the government, of the private counsels which were done before.
Can you engage the services of a consultant? It would appear to me that hiring of consultant is a general power of government agencies. Can you hire legal consultants?
We also do not hire legal consultants, Mr. Chair, because we deem it to be an insult to the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel.
All right. So, and you are not hiring consultants because you do not believe that it is a correct policy for the OGCC to hire legal consultants. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
But in general, under your general powers, under the agency, the powers of a government agency, hiring of consultants provided in the budget would not be prohibited. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but the budget of the office is so minimal that we really do not, or we really cannot afford if it is necessary to hire a private consultant.
Now, what I am driving at, and I can see my chairman smiling, is whether or not we should include a provision in the proposed charter which prohibits the OGCC from hiring consultants, whether legal or otherwise, in the performance of their function.
Well, Mr. Chair, I think it is not necessary to include in the charter because the budget as granted to the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel does not really include the hiring of consultants.
Again, Attorney Vega, it's not a question of budget, it's not a question of desire, it is a question of policy as embodied in the law. My suggestion, Mr. Chair, is that we maintain the present policy of prohibiting hiring of legal consultants, but that should not prohibit the OGCC from hiring other technical support and consultants because they may need that in the course of their work. Not legal representation, but work related to a prosecution of a case, but which would need a consultant. Would you agree with that, Mr. Witness?
We submit, Mr. Chair, if it comes to the necessity of hiring a consultant, I agree with your suggestion.
Okay, maybe we can instruct the technical working group with the concurrence of the committee to come up with a suggested provision which should meet the concurrence of the committee. Now,
Would Senator Drilon wrap up because you've gotten more than 10 minutes already.
just one or two more questions with your concurrence.
Thank you.
Just one or two more. Now, my impression is that the bill would equalize and provide parity between the OGCC lawyers and the lawyers in the public attorney's office and in the OSG. Is that correct? And the National Prosecution Service. Tama po ba yun?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The bill would make apart the different positions of the OGCC with its counterpart in OSG, National Prosecution Service, and the PAO.
Yes, and it is in that regard, Mr. Chair, that I manifest my support for that concept. They should really be on equal footing. That's the principle of the compensation in the government. I want to ask a question on Section 10 of the proposed measure. At least it's in the House version, and it concerns special assessment, Mr. Chair. Section 10 reads, the OGCC is authorized to receive 10%, or is it 20%? I know what it is. No, first to clarify, Mr. Chair. First, I asked the witness to clarify, Mr. Chair, percentage of assessment that the law authorizes OGCC to impose on money claims collected by, awarded, and adjudged to the GOCCs, in addition to the attorney's fees awarded by a court. Can you spread into the record, Mr. Witness, how this works?
Mr. Chair, with regards to attorney's fees, the OGCC is entitled to receive attorney's fees as this is already stated in the Administrative Code or the EO 292. And that is also supported by a Supreme Court decision, Pacific Mills versus on a particular case, granting OGCC the right to receive the attorney's fees. Now that is different.
I have no problem with that, Mr. Chair. We have no problem with that. We support the continued recognition of that rule that you're entitled to attorney's fees. The question is on the special assessment.
Yes.
What is the special assessment?
The special assessment was first in the provision under PD 1415, which granted the Government Corporate Counsel the right to assess the government corporations. This special assessment is to assess government corporations to appropriate funds for the OGCC to meet contingencies and obligations. We are just including it here because this is also already given under PD 1415.
Okay. Now, can you give an example of the special assessments that you may have assessed on the GOCCs in the recent, let's say in the recent 12 months, in the past 12 months?
Actually, in the recent years, we have not asked for any assessments from the GOCCs. And as far as I can remember, it was at least around 7 years ago when there were special assessments made, particularly for the equipment of the office, like computers and other printers.
You assessed the GOCCs on those capital expenses. You assessed, you had a special assessment on
Yes.
the GOCCs for those capital equipment. How much is it? How much is the special assessment?
Well, it
Is it
depends upon the government corporations on the amount that they can give as assessed by the Government Corporate Counsel. However, these assessments, as required by the COA, has to be remitted to the National Treasury, and we will have to request for the appropriation that it be remitted back to the OGCC. But as of now, they have not given it back, Mr. Chair.
So there is no use of income provision in the charter. So you are allowed to assess. The assessment goes to the National Treasury, and you must seek a release of that assessment from the budget. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Does it need appropriation under the General Appropriations Act or only an act of the DBM?
Only an act of the DBM, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Now, and you do not recommend a change in that setup?
That is why in this particular provision, Mr. Chair, the Senate bill says that the Government Corporate Counsel can disburse such amounts which are granted to the OGCC.
How much is it, by the way? Is it 10% or 20% of the money claims collected by your office? What is the percentage? Is it a range or is it one only?
No,
amount.
actually, Mr. Chair, it is just an amount which is minimal and for the particular needs of the office, and that is usually on some capital outlay.
But we're talking about percentages, not an amount. What is the percentage that you're allowed to assess of the amount you collect in litigation?
Actually, Mr. Chair, there is no amount or percentage that would be required of the Government Corporate Counsel to comply with regards to special assessments.
Okay.
It's separate. It's separate, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Maybe you can recommend language to the committee which will make this more precise and understandable. Anyway, that is all, Mr. Chair, and I support in general the proposal of the OGCC. I think it is reasonable with some refinements that we have proposed of our interpretation. Thank you very much, Mr. Senator Gordon, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Dillon. With the permission of everyone, I just want to make follow-up questions. Mr. Vega, all these questions of Senator Dillon are in the law. Isn't that correct? In other words, you can the GOCC can hire outside counsel upon the written concurrence of upon the written concurrence of the OGCC, particularly you. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that
That's
particular
section
RA 83,
RA 380 8383
Section 1.
Section 1.
it is contained in different laws, Mr. Chair.
But it doesn't matter, but it's clear. What really mystifies me is parang natatakot ka sa COA. Ipinapasok mo kaagad yung COA, parang nagpapa-pre-audit ka. We're in a post-audit regime. I don't think you should bring the COA right away. We don't need lawyers or trying to be overly careful because that will slow down the bureaucracy. Would you agree to that?
Mr. Chair, with regards to hiring of private counsels, it should be a concurrence of the COA.
Where is that in the law?
Before it, yes, it is under the COA rules and regulations.
No, but the prevailing law is your charter. And it is very clear there. Even without saying, COA can post-audit you. In fact, that has happened, di ba? All the time. For example, shall I tell you about the APECO case? Are you familiar with the APECO case? Where your predecessor, Mr. Jurado, was taken out by the president and chastised, if not disbarred practically by the Supreme Court. Was he disbarred? There was a threat to disbar him.
Admonish, Mr. Chair.
Admonish. Why? Because he gave a 75-year franchise in APECO to a casino. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And then he turned back against all of you, including yourself. About 15 or 16 lawyers were charged by Mr. Jurado, acting as a whistleblower that says you were all getting special allowances. Would that be correct? Or is that what you call emoluments or fees?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
What is this? You took money from the casino operator. Yes or no? I'm sorry, I have to ask that question because, as far as I'm concerned, if the law says you can assess fees, So long as it's above board, it's fine. But if it went south and it went under the table, on the side of the table, including the table, that is something that is wrong. Would you agree?
Yes, Mr.
Now
Chair.
I ask you that question again. You took money. Was that in the nature of fees?
No, Mr. Chair, we did not.
But why did you pause a long time? This is not a blue ribbon investigation. Don't worry. I'm not trying to catch you. I was just wondering why you were so defensive when you were asked whether you will be allowed to charge and whether you will you can take lawyers from outside. And I already said that the law says, and I don't have to say it because we're all lawyers here, that upon written consent, a GOCC would do so. And I was in Subic, I hired outside counsel, in fact, international counsel, and I was allowed, right? Because
Yes,
we were
Mr.
handling a
Chair.
very, very big multi-million-dollar account with Coastal Petroleum.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, on the matter of the other questions that I would like to follow up would be this moment. My notes are kind of topsy-turvy. Yeah, it would appear that when you show your budget, can you show your budget again? The budget would be an outstanding, almost 100% increase. Would that be correct, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Now, I want to support you in terms of salary increases. And that's why I brought in the office, the IBP president here. Senator Gedon came from Accra, and I don't know if Attorney Acosta came from Accra as well. I'm not sure. But let me just ask Attorney Cayosa, I'm sorry. Would that be the salaries right now of government councils or even OSG, GOCC? They're quite high, aren't they?
Yes, Your Honor.
And then-
Compared to private law firms, they're relatively high.
And many law
Except
firms
for-
are talking to
for
me.
the partners.
And many law firms are talking to me and saying are saying that it's too high. They can no longer get the lawyers. That's correct, right? The correct lawyers for their law offices, like yours, for example.
Yes, Your Honor. At least for the lower ranking members of the firm, the rates of government lawyers are very competitive, if not much
Very
higher.
competitive or unusually high?
Well, I would not qualify it as unusually high, but relative to the private sector, the government lawyers receive much higher pay, especially at the lower ranking levels, Your Honor.
In the case of OGCC, they are the current rate for the entry level is 98,800 and change. All right, is that too high?
Well, compared to the entry level for decent law firms, or even for the big law firms, Your Honor, that's more than twice the entry level pay.
So it is unusually high, correct?
Relative, yes, Your Honor.
All right, let me go back to Justice Vega again. When you showed us a chart, you're doubling practically the budget for salaries and for the whole budget of the OGCC alone. When you start talking about that, you're asking for more lawyers, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
You are asking for more lawyers. And the current lawyers that you have is about 57, is it?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And yet, when I look at your performance, in the case of cases that you handle, you win about 57% and you lose 47% or 48%. Would you say that's a good batting order? Good record for the salaries that you're getting?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Really now?
Yes, because the cases that we are handling are not really all winnable cases. That's why we have to sink and swim with regards to these cases being forwarded to us by the government.
And don't you make a recommendation to the GOCCs that they should have winnable cases, that they should not be fooling around, and if they're not winnable, that means they're not qualified to be in the GOCC, and you should make a recommendation to the committee created by our previous speaker, Senator Delon, that they should be watched as to their performance. I mean, government, obviously the government.
And I think the GCG is already in place, in which this GCG can at least monitor these particular acts of the GOCCs.
Well, I'm not trying to, but all I'm saying is, if you're asking for more lawyers, I think what you need are quality lawyers.
Yes, Mr. Chair, of course, Mr.
Not
Chair.
quantity, not. It's not a question of quantity, but really quality. Do you recruit lawyers in law schools like UP, Ateneo,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
LaSalle, San Beda,
Yes, Mr.
not
Chair.
in that necessarily in that order. Do you get the creme de la creme?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have
Really?
we
And
have
how come your previous OGCC was scanned by the president and the Supreme Court, and that there were accusations on both sides of the fence?
He's a presidential appointee, Mr.
I
Chair.
know, but so you're now blaming President Duterte, who appointed him. Is that what you're saying?
We have no control over such particular.
I didn't say you had control. My premise is, I'm not arguing with you. My premise is, if you're going to ask that much, I would imagine that you'd be able to budget the time of everyone and make sure that they study the cases so that the government, the OGCC can win more cases. I just want you to win.
Yes, of course, Mr. Chair. We try hard to win the cases of the government corporations.
You're from the Ateneo, right? Law school?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Did you read the news that the Ateneo beat the whole South Korean quintet?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Twice, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
With of the
Which means
Athenians
that
playing.
even a young lawyer, provided he's properly trained, can beat the big guys, right? And that's why you're saying you should get 20%. You were the ones who specified a 20% fee for attorney's fees. That will remain in your office and that will not go to the general fund as it is wont to be.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So that you could use it for improving facilities, using it for other things that your office needs. Would that be correct, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So, Senator Dillon and I agree on the fact that, gulat ako kay Senator Dillon because I know that pagka pinag-usapan namin to, we all have second thoughts about granting all kinds of benefits and allowances because once somebody starts, everybody starts. And this one is really fair because we are really equalizing, di ba? Right?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
But we're not going to go helter-skelter and say just on the issue of your proposal that you're going to put it on parity, that you will get it. In fact, there must be a promise that the OGCC will be a better organization. In fact, it should have been because, as you heard, the IBP, you're getting the lawyers coming in entry level are getting twice what CCIP and ACRA are giving.
Yes,
Do
Mr.
you
Chair.
realize that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That will be the obligation of the OGCC, Mr. Chair.
Well, without saying, right? But you should put it in the culture that not because of the payment, but because they owe it to themselves as professionals to win the cases.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And at the same time, let me ask you then, if you knew that the Solicitor General is going to handle a case involving a government corporation named PAGCOR, what did you do? You just kept quiet, folded your arms and say, appointed ng presidente na naman yan wala akong magagawa dyan? Or could you not have made a statement either to the DOJ or to the president himself to say, sir, the OSG is poaching. Is encroaching on on the OCGG, which has primary jurisdiction on all all government corporations. Would that be a correct statement, sir?
What we would usually do is to call the attention of the government.
No, I'm asking you, what did you do there? Not you. Obviously, you did not do that.
Yes,
In
Mr.
the case
Chair.
of the Solicitor General taking over a particular case that rightfully belongs in your department.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And were you the chairman at that time?
No, Mr. Chair.
Who was it? Mr. Jurado?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And you were number 2.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And as the advertising go, we're only number 2, so we try harder.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Might it have been possible to you to advise your chairman at that time? Or your ano title na? Director or whatever?
Government
Corporate
Corporate Counsel, sir.
Would it be out of place to say, sir, that's within our department, but kinukuha niyan?
Yes, we did, Mr. Chair.
Did you write it down?
No, Mr. Chair.
Oh, di ba tayo lawyers, dapat meron tayong paper trail, especially if you're right, and we're fighting for the right, you should have a paper trail. Hindi ka tuloy matatanong ngayon, kasi kung sinagot mo si Senator Dilong kanina, sir, I fought it, I have a letter here that says it's not legal to do so. Primary jurisdiction, in fact, only jurisdiction for Government Corporate Counsel belongs to the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
What do you mean, yes, Mr. Chair? By the way, I'd like to be addressed as Mr. Chairman. I'm not made of wood.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. What does it mean? What does yes mean?
Yeah, we were not able to put it in writing, but we did formally inform our head with regards to that.
Now, there was a recent case. I hate to do this, no? Called the PNCC and Radstock. Senator Dillon is very familiar with this case. In that particular case, there were contrary opinions being done by the OGCC. Would that be correct, Senator Dillon?
Honestly, I could not recall, Mr. Chairman, on whether or not there were opinions rendered by the OGCC. I'm sorry. I have to review.
Let me try to refresh, because I understand that initially they refused to accept it, and then later on they concurred with it. And as you know, that case was really, really spectacularly corrupt. Would you agree with that? Are you familiar with that case?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Would you like to expound? I just want to see whether you remember, in fact, that particular case.
Mr. Chair, there was a case filed against the PNCC for a specific performance on this debt, which was acknowledged by the PNCC board.
After there was laches on the obligation.
There was already prescription, Mr. Chair, more than 10 years. And
in fact, this particular case, it was more than 20 years already, practically.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In fact, the OGCC defended PNCC in this specific performance filed by the Radstock. And initially, we were defending PNCC with regards to this particular amount being so large, and that it was not authorized by the former PNCC board. And then
In fact, obligation was never recognized, and there was never any record in the records of the government corporation involved, the PNCC. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And
But
with that,
suddenly recognized this amount.
after 20 years,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
would you say that was mysterious?
Yes, because out of nowhere,
Miraculous?
Mr. Chairman, out of nowhere, there was an acknowledgement of this debt.
So it's a case of magic. Out of nowhere, suddenly they were recognizing it.
And also they recognized the 36 billion taxes due to government.
Not only the taxes, but the amount originally was for 10 billion yung cash. Pero yung property, hindi sinama, kunyari, yung pala, mas malaki di hamak yung property. Sinama doon sa compromise agreement, yung cash, binabaan ng 6 billion. Tapos yung property, hindi sinasabi.
Including
Including the fees of the CDCP.
The toll fees which are collected in the tollways.
Which is by its nature is government funds. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Those
Now,
were
having,
funds.
now, having said that, this is one of my exasperations, my frustrations that causes me a lot of depression, that a lot of these things happen and yet nothing happens afterwards. Did anybody go to jail? Did anybody charge? In fact, they were all dismissed, weren't they?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, no criminal cases were filed against these people. And I do not know also of any administrative case filed against them after the case was declared null and void.
Don't you think you should know? I'm looking at it, and it was told to me about 8 months ago, and I was so shocked because Justice Carpio said that this is one of the most corrupt cases.
Yeah.
Alam ni Senator General, I think I've refreshed his memory because Brad na si
Yes.
Justice Carpio.
Yes, I do recall that, Mr. Senator. In fact, it was we delivered a privileged speech, which was quoted extensively by the Supreme Court.
And I commend you for it because you were in the right. I just
Yeah.
don't know why the OGCC did not see it when it was so patent. And let me be very clear. Is it not the case that the compromise agreement reduced a case that would have been involved about 38 billion pesos, if I'm not mistaken, and they reduced it down to 10 billion, and then suddenly they went on a compromise agreement from out of nowhere and brought it down to 6 billion?
Yes, that's
Mr.
correct.
Chair. It
And,
became 6 billion only.
And this is all at the prodding of the PNCC, right?
Yes, Mr.
Yes.
Chair.
And the government corporate counsel is supposed to protect the interests of the country, right?
The
They
government
forgot the 19
corporate
pieces of
council-
real property.
The government corporate council then approved the compromise agreement, Mr. Chairman.
So would you say the record of the OGCC is quite spotless and should be raised to the highest level in the altars of honor and integrity?
Well, as I have said earlier, Mr. Chairman, it's very hard to control these particular actions of the head of office.
Why is it very hard? I mean, if the people that you're hiring are highly paid, should they not have the integrity to blow the whistle when something like this is happening?
Well, on my part,
Are you teaching that in your term as the head of the OGCC, which is a very, very honorable position? I hope you are inculcating that in all the lawyers there.
yes, Mr. Chairman, we are very particular on that. In fact, any opinion or contract reviews passes through at least 4 supervising lawyers before
But
it.
the Apeco case, ganun rin ang nangyari, di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and
So-
we objected to that particular opinion, but they just produced their own opinion favoring
Who's
that.
they? Who's they?
The government corporate counsel then, and one of his confidential lawyers.
You know, I'll tell you, they were allowed to get lawyers, confidential lawyers, right?
No, Mr. Chair, it is a term used for a non-permanent lawyer assigned to the government corporate counsel.
So, meron kayong ganon, non-permanent lawyers.
Pro
Ano
terminus,
yun, consultant, ano yun?
pro terminus is employee's position, Mr. Chairman.
Confidential talaga, co-terminus with the head of office. So, he can always appoint one that will always agree with him.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Paano ang tao? Wala na. No, don't get me wrong. I'm for this. I just want to point out na some of these people are still running around the country, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Who are running around the country? Yung Radstock. Andiyan pa ba yung tao na running around the country?
In fact, appointed to higher positions, Mr. Chairman.
Who is that? Would you know? I'm sure you know.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Would you tell us who it is?
The Secretary of Finance was, the now Secretary of Finance was also mentioned in the
Mentioned?
in the case.
Mentioned?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Did he not perform the stellar role of being the attorney, in fact, representing a corporation that we don't even know the board, and that there was $50,000 only in capital that was put in that corporation, a BVI corporation? Mentioned? I can see my friend, Senator Dillon, laughing because we express our frustration. We investigate and investigate. And the IBP watches, and I hope the IBP can help us with this. And not just smile at us. And that we should follow through with all this, really, really jarring, staggering, burlesque of corruption. O ba't wala na si lumipat ka ng bar, Justice Vega? You have a nice honor, you have the same rank as Court of Appeals, that's why I have to call you Justice. It's just like many people who get an honorary degree and they want to prefer to be called doctor. That's good. That's good. That gives you more honor. And therefore, I ask you a question. The Department of Finance Secretary was involved in that. And his name is?
Secretary Dominguez, Mr. Chairman.
Secretary?
Dominguez, Carlos Dominguez.
Yes. I'm really sorry that I have to ask you that question because there are certain things that really cry out to heaven for justice. And really, nagulat ako, even I was startled by what happened here in this particular case. Now, do you know if money changed hands or that property was brought out into the open and given to Radstock?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Na-decide yung case 2006 ata, tapos 2010 ato, 2009 when it was finally decided. But the compromise agreement was done in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. So, could other properties have been transferred already, other assets?
I think it was not transferred, Mr. Chairman.
I hope so. But nonetheless, do you agree that that was a very, very bad time for the OGCC? We could have gotten all the honors. Instead, Senator Dillon was the one who exposed it in Congress. And like I said, my question is very consistent. If OSG is trying to poach in your territory, you would normally complain, right? You would immediately say, hey, Mr. OSG, we're co-equal. We're both salary grade 31. And therefore, you should not poach in my territory. And so when because that is really the jurisdiction of the OGCC. Di ba?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I'm not trying to, it's just so important to me because I also happen to be chairman of the Government Corporations Committee. And therefore, I'd like to be able to see the mistakes of the past so we can correct them. Now, again, did you ask the OSG about their opinion to this bill? Because they're in the habit of taking over your function sometimes. In other words, can they suddenly take over on appeal and say, no, we will represent it, and you will not be allowed to do so? They will say, I will represent, not you. Can they do that?
No, Mr. Chair.
You will not allow it?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank
Sorry.
you. Hinabol mo pa yung chairman. Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Just force of
Uh,
habit.
Uh, and so I will ask questions later on, but I didn't want to put you in a spot, and I didn't want myself to be put on the spot. But really, I condemn that, and I support Senator Dillon because he was the one who started it. And there are many cases here that happen in the country, like the Vaxa case. When we follow it up, hindi na ma-follow up. But in the Blue Ribbon, at least we got people in jail. Nakulong namin yung dalawa. Yung sinabi pa, 50 million, binawasan nila 1,000 para hindi sila ma-plunder. So nakakulong yung dalawang lawyer na yung ngayon. Highest official lang immigration yan. Ha? So, also, it takes a certain amount of spine to be able to go after. And when we went after the chief PNP, he retired unceremoniously without any parade and review because obviously he was involved where his own colonel is still in jail until now. And we did not allow people like in customs or the PIDEA. There are two colonels right now that have not been captured. They're on a wall, and yet the government does nothing. My statement here is simply to say we are all sworn to do our jobs and sworn to uphold the law. But it gets very exasperating when we try very hard and nothing happens, and we just let it go and say talagang ganyan, wala tayong magagawa. Would that be the motto of OGCC? Talagang ganyan, wala tayong magagawa?
Of course not, Mr. Chairman.
I'm glad you suddenly became very emphatic. Of course not. Of course not. I will now stop and allow, I think Senator Tolentino would like to ask a question. Sorry, Senator Tolentino. I was just following up. I was going to ask first, but I allowed my colleague who was here to ask questions, Senator Dillon. And now, whichever you may ask your questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I use my time multitasking. I attended the other committee hearing chaired by Senator Villar. Just some clarificatory questions addressed to the OGCC head. How do I call you? Justice Vega or Attorney Vega?
It can be anyway, Mr. Chairman.
So, Justice Vega, you mentioned a while ago, this is a follow-up question to the previous query of Senator Drilon, that OGCC may hire private lawyers under exceptional circumstances. Can you define that exceptional circumstances? Who decides when there are exceptional circumstances? Is it you or is it the Office of the President?
First, it is the government corporation client which decides who to hire for a particular case, and it will be referred to us for concurrence. And if it is based on exceptional consideration, then we will.
Like, for instance, what are exceptional considerations? Because I was referred to a case, PBDEC Industrial Authority versus Capital Steel Corporation, decided by the Supreme Court last 2003. So how would you define that exceptional situation or circumstance, Justice? Yun yung tanong ko.
Usually, first it would be the kind of cases which the private counsel will handle. Second, it would be the venue. Third, it would be the expertise or the technical know-how of such a particular private firm, and also with the COA's concurrence.
Going back to that COA concurrence, which was also mentioned by the minority leader, there appears to be an omission on the part of on the draft bills that I have. Section 3 of the draft bill, the proposal, never mentioned that COA concurrence prior to the engagement of a private lawyer. Would that mean that your intention right now is to do away with this Commission on Audit concurrence, Justice?
I think it is not our intention to do away with this particular concurrence of the COA. We would rather that it would be included in these proposed bills.
So you're comfortable with the inclusion of the words COA concurrence. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it was, Mr. Chairman, it was actually from the Memorandum Circular number 9 of the President, which required prior COA concurrence before the hiring of the private counsel. And also it is included.
Yes, I thank you. So we will place that on the bill. Questions were made relative to the OGCC 20% assessment, special assessment, attorney's fees. If you compute all of this, attorney's fees, special assessments, and the projected 20% of the money claims, ano yung total nito na inaabot? Just as an example.
Mr. Chairman, we do not have any particular total of these amounts, as these special assessments are no longer utilized by the OGCC.
So what I'm referring to is this, Justice. Are you comfortable with a ceiling, perhaps, or a cap as to the amount that can be received by your office in the aggregate relative to attorney's fees, etc., etc.?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And if you're comfortable with that, how much would be your comfortable ceiling? How much would that be?
For the assessments, special assessments, Mr. Chair, we will be comfortable with not more than 100% of the grant of the General Appropriations Act on our capital outlay.
And that would be how much, sir?
Around
for this fiscal year?
5 to 10 million a year, annual.
You answered I'm taking down notes. You answered a previous question coming from the good minority leader that once you receive an X amount coming from GOCCs, it goes to the National Treasury. Am I correct? Was that your
Yes, Sir Chairman.
appropriate response? But Justice, are you aware of Executive Order 292?
Yes, Sir Chairman.
The Administrative Code,
Yes.
wherein, and I quote, it authorizes the OGCC to receive attorney's fees awarded to GOCCs, which shall accrue to the former special fund. Special fund, meaning to say, it will not revert to the National Treasury and shall be made available without the need for a cash disbursement ceiling. So which is now correct? Your reply to Senator Drilon's question was that it goes to the National Treasury, but under the Administrative Code, it goes to your special fund.
Yes,
Has it been
Mr.
amended?
Chairman. The provision under the EO 292 is correct, but by practice, the COA auditors would usually require us not to use this, but to submit it or remit it to the Bureau of Treasury. So we have no recourse but to follow the COA's ruling with regards to these particular special assessments.
So your interpretation right now is between the COA's ruling, and which is now the traditional practice, and the exact provision of the administrative code, you defer to the COA ruling
Yes,
and
Mr.
sidetrack the administrative code of the Philippines.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Even if we cite this administrative code, they will issue our disbursement with AOMs and notice of disallowances. That's why in order to avoid this, we have to limit it to the National Treasury.
And would you not want that to be placed in the new law
Yes, Mr.
to
Chair.
rectify everything?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we included it in order that it will be specific and clear as to how we are going to go about the special assessments.
So, under the new law, there is no more need to have that funds transferred, reverted back to the National Treasury. Am I correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Justice. One last question, and probably you can be forthright here. There seems to be an overlap between the functions of your office and the Office of the Solicitor General. I think you're familiar with the head of the Office of the Solicitor General. It doesn't matter. OSG right now, GOCCs, should that be discontinued? Should all funds be given to your office? Isn't this overlap a pure and simple, Justice?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that should be addressed. And in this
Narinig niyo po
particular,
ako?
there is a intermittent loss of your audio, Mr. Chair.
I have to repeat. I'm sorry. I have to repeat. It appears that the current practice right now is the OSG is still authorized to represent and are still representing several GOCCs. Pure and simple, this is duplication. Under the proposed measure, would you be comfortable with the exclusive authority to be granted to OGCC, to your office, to the exclusion of OSG, to prevent duplication of functions, Justice?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are amenable to such inclusion of that particular provision in our charter.
Under the present setup, in case of an overlap, which should prevail? It is similar to the query a while ago by Senator Drilon, conflicting or different opinions, which should prevail?
Well, usually, Mr. Chairman, the government corporation would be requesting our office instead of the OSG. And in that case, we will be the one prevailing.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions. I'm very supportive of this measure. Although during the earlier introductory remarks made by the head of the OGCC, he mentioned the need to adapt to the changing times. I have yet to hear, Mr. Chairman, some examples of the changing times that would make this government office be flexible and attuned to the needs of the changing times. Meron ka pa ma-cite doon? Kahit isa lang, Justice. Then I will now yield the floor to the chairman again. Justice, ano ba yung changing times na kailangan?
Well, there are a lot of projects being pursued by the government corporation, the client government corporations, and that is why the OGCC should be in the forefront of this, considering that these new projects of the government corporations are also complex in in a particular way and has to be supported by the legal support it needs. Like for the example, the new water sources of the MWSS and all other new projects of the government corporations, these international arbitrations, which are also being done in Singapore and other venues, and this new digitization of the corporations, and which the OGCC has to be abreast in all these complexities. Mr. Chairman.
And Justice, I think you may want to add the recent pronouncements coming from the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas that Bitcoin, cryptocurrency will be a commonplace part of our financial transactions, and you might want to have your office be well-versed and attuned to cryptocurrency as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have used a lot of my time, and thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to ask questions. Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat, Justice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Tolentino. Are there any other senators there? Would the Senator Dillon, you still have to ask some more questions? Or are you done? Senator Dillon? Senator Frank? Are there any more questions? It seems that Senator Dillon cannot hear me. But as far as I'm concerned, the issue is the expansion of the strength and the adjustment of the salaries to be at par. For example, Justice Vega, you will now be 31 when this is approved, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You had to say that with a smile in your face. And your deputy would become
30,
30.
Mr. Chairman.
What about the Assistant Government Corporate Counsel? He will also be 30?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And it will just be at par with the OSG.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Just for clarification purposes, the attorney 4 would have the RTC judge. He would be 29 instead of 28. And the government attorney, attorney 3, will be ranked 28 and not 27. And government attorney, no, that was attorney 3. From 26, she will become 27. And government corporate attorney will become 26 instead of 25, in which she will now be getting a salary of 111,742 pesos, and so forth and so on. That is your proposal. That is what you want for your department, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Right. And we are disposed to do that simply because it's not fair. I don't usually go on civil minimums. One department gets this, that has to be justified, and I believe that the caseload is heavy enough, but I just hope that you get quality lawyers so that you can do a lot better when you report to us next time.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We will do that, Mr. Chairman.
And we will also incorporate the clarifications made by some of us here, Joint Senator Dillon, and then after which I just want to be sure we invited the Office of the Solicitor General. Would you please raise your hand so I can call you? Who is that? Attorney.
Mr. Chairman, I am ASG Eric Panga.
Eric Panga. Yes, I know you. Are there any comments from you? Do you have any objections, violent or otherwise?
Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, our office submitted a position paper on the OGCC bills.
It's now your time to expound that the other senators are here.
Yes, if I may be allowed to discuss the position, the matters we raised in the opposition paper. May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Yes. In the position paper our office submitted, we discussed, number one, the power of jurisdiction and mandate of the OSG.
Excuse me, Attorney Panga, I'm sorry for intervening. We just received your position paper this morning. Just for the record, all right? Before I get upset with my staff. Now, please proceed and explain yourself so far as your position.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under EO 292, Mr. Chairman, Section 35, it provides that when authorized by the President or head of the office concerned, the Office of the Solicitor General shall also represent government-owned or controlled corporations. In Administrative Order Number 130, Series of 1994, Section 1 thereof also mentions, unless their respective charters expressly name the Office of the Solicitor General as their legal counsel, when authorized by the President or by the head of the office concerned and approved by the President, the OSG shall also represent GOCCs. This is in line with Section 17 of Article 7 of the Constitution, which says that the President shall have control of all the executive departments, bureaus, and offices. In other words, Mr. Chairman, under the bill, if OGCC will be granted the authority to represent all the government-owned or controlled corporations, then it will go against this provision because Section 17, Article 7, because under that provision, the President can authorize the Solicitor General to represent the GOCCs, or if their charters so provide, they can also get OSG representation.
I think that is not in question, Attorney Pangas, because we all know that the President, and I think if I didn't mention that, I stand corrected. The President can, because I know, because when I was SBMA, we awarded a contract, and when it went up, I was told by the Supreme Court, the contract may be correct, but the President has absolute control under the Constitution to, supplant your decision. And in this particular case, we're aware that as early as 1987 ba yan? In 292, that the President can come in and authorize. But, there has got to be some regularity and predictability. Otherwise, if you don't have that, then everybody will be on tenterhooks. Senator Gilal, I'm sure you have a comment about that.
Yes. Well, yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I haven't read the opinion or the position paper of the Solicitor General since it was only filed this morning. But it is clear, if you review all the laws, there must be a clear delineation of functions. As we know, Mr. Chairman, the present situation of the legal services of government was punctuated by various power struggles in the past. Paano po nangyari ito? Dati, the Secretary of Justice is the legal counsel of the government. That's provided for in the laws. Now, during martial law, let's call a spade a spade. During martial law, because of the competition between then Solicitor General Mendoza and Secretary of Justice Puno, Secretary Mendoza was able to have a PD signed, which elevated the Solicitor General to a cabinet post and reporting to the Secretary of Justice only for policy and program coordination. So what happens today is that the Solicitor General would only submit his budget to the DOJ Secretary because it is only for policy and program coordination. For the rest of the year, there is no interaction between the Solgen and the DOJ Secretary. That's the reality today. I have seen that. I have gone through that. Insofar as the OGCC is concerned, again, with, my good friend also, who's si OGCC, Lazaro, Lolong Lazaro, also had a P design, which again carved out the OGCC from the functions of the DOJ, and the niche was the government corporations. So you have three bodies composed all lawyers who are arguing on their jurisdictions because the laws, PDs, the issued caused a confusion of the functions of the three. We tried, in fact, the most recent bill, Mr. Chairman, if you recall, was a bill from the OSG, which basically again would have elevated or increased the salary package of the Solicitor Generals. We supported that, Mr. Chairman, as you recall, but also we tried to clear the muddled jurisdiction because of all the previous laws. Today, the situation is still the same because that bill, which tried to create to rationalize the shared jurisdictions of the different offices, was vetoed by the president. For whatever reason, it was vetoed by the president. So we are exactly where we are today. Again, objectively, if you examine the administrative code, the laws which created the OSG and the OGCC, there is reason for each one to claim jurisdiction over a particular issue. Kaya po nagkakagulo yan. Most recently, the OSG even rendered an opinion on a tax matter, which made it worse. It should be, as asserted by the Office of the Solicitor of the Government Corporate Counsel, should have been the OGCC who should have rendered the opinion. On the other hand, since it involved a tax matter, it should have been the BIR commissioner. So all of these are resulting in a confused state. And Mr. Chairman, I would like to think that it falls on our shoulders to once more define and clarify these conflicts in jurisdiction brought about by personalities in the past. And I'm not faulting any of them. I'm just stating a fact. I'm just stating a fact that all of these conflicts of jurisdiction arose during the time of martial law, when these jurisdictions were defined by one signature of the president without benefit of a debate like this, where we draw out ideas as to how it should be. So, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, that's my contribution. We will attempt again to clarify the jurisdictions of these three principal legal offices of the government, if we can, because this is an opportunity presented. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Well, I take note and welcome the statement made by Senator Drilon. I remember we said when we asked them who's the lawyer of the government, and we both said the Secretary of Justice. And in fact, if you look at the history of all these positions, they were all under the Department of Justice from day one, from their inception. And at one time, the Office of Solicitor General, part of this office included the GOCC up to 1959. When in 1959, an executive order was issued that transferred and created a separate charter for the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel to the Office of the Solicitor General. While Attorney Peña's statement, Attorney Panga's statement rings true, that is really the exception. The general rule is that the Office of the Government Corporate Counsel has jurisdiction over all cases involving government corporations. And it becomes an exception only, and quoting the law, when the president so authorizes. Can I have the law, please? When authorized by the president or head of the office concerned, it shall also represent government-owned or controlled corporations. It means it shall also, the language itself is quite clear. This is really, when authorized by the president, the OSG shall also represent. But the general rule is it is OCGG, and that's why I ask you, you should assert that, because in the case of PAGCOR, it should have been OCGG because it's a government corporation. As we say, lawyers, affiant say it not. Go ahead, Attorney Panga.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the position paper, our office also said that if the OGCC bills were to improve their benefits, then it need not include in their jurisdiction in the coverage of the GOCCs, the economic zones, state universities, and water districts. There's a law, Republic Act number 10149, which enumerates what GOCCs are covered, and in section 4 thereof, state universities and colleges, local water districts, and economic zone authorities are expressly excluded. We also mentioned, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, about the GCA 3 and GCA 4 positions which have judicial rank but are not appointed by the President. In our office, the solicitors who have judicial ranks are all appointed by the President, starting from the State Solicitor 1 up to the Solicitor General. But here in the bills, GCA 3 and GCA 4 positions, which are given the rank, salary, allowances, retirement, pension benefits, emoluments, prerogatives, and privileges of an MTC and RTC judge, are not appointed by the President. For another, the salary grade 26 and 27 positions under the bills require lower qualifications compared to the OSG counterparts. Like I said, the qualifications for the position of Solicitor 1 and State Solicitor 1, State Solicitor 2 are equivalent to that of a municipal judge and requires at least 5 years practice of law. We, however, see as laudable the automatic increased benefit under the OGCC bills. And if the purpose is to make it at par with other offices, then we assume that the OSG should be made at par also with OGCC. We also mentioned, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, about personnel benefits. The mention in the bill's provisions of other laws to the contrary notwithstanding, there makes the impression about COA not having participation anymore. And finally, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors, about attorney's fees and special assessment, we mentioned that the OSG only gets 5% from the monetary awards in cases we win. And the benefits given to OGCC, like the benefits given to OSG, should be within the current compensation framework of government offices. Therefore, we mentioned that benefits given to OGCC under the bill should not be used to fund Provident Fund directly from the GAA and HMO. That is all, Mr. Chairman, Your Honors. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Your comments are nonetheless taken, and I just want to say that all of us are lawyers, and a lawyer in OSG is not superior to the lawyer in GOCC. At least I hope. I think that we should try to get the creme de la creme. As to your statement that there may be emoluments that will now be contained in this law that OSG doesn't have, we'll have to take a look at that in our technical working group, the committee, that we will have to emphasize these points that you raised. But really, Senator Dulon and I, and this is my own personal opinion, really, just so happens that we're in congruence. Really, we want clarity in the law. We don't want a scattergun approach to crafting the law, and we want to be sure that everybody, we put a stop to, we'll top you, and then the other guy will say, we want to top the other one, and we cannot do that. I suppose that's your point, right? If they get that, we get that too. All right? So we will certainly avoid that and take a look at your positions that you have stated. Nonetheless, I agree with you that the President can always assign even the Secretary of Justice to represent. And if you go look at history, and I try to think of history all the time, every time we craft laws or make a decision, it's clear that all of you came from the same branch, the Department of Justice. At one time, you absorbed the GOCC, and then it was taken away from you. And now we're just leveling the playing field, so to speak. All right? The uniqueness of the GOCCs or the OGCC is that they only handle the OSG, unless you're proposing now that OSG now takes over all the functions, including private corporations. And I really question why we have to take out certain functions like those of the economic zones, because they're all government corporations. On that note, I have a glass of water. On that note, if there are no more questions, I just want to ask one more question to, can you react, Just Vega, to the comments made by the Solicitor General?
Yes, Mr.
Do you
Chairman.
want us to put that into the law?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, precisely that is there is a necessity to delineate functions, as the minority leader, Senator Drilon, has already stated, and that would be a function that should be delineated under this particular bill. With regards to this personnel complement, the requirement that it has to go through the president is now under the charter of the OGCC, and does not need to go to the appointment of the office of the president on the GCA 4 and 3, because these particular positions are more for promotions of the personnel of the office. But the GCC and AGCCs and the deputy are all appointed by the president. Now, with regards to the benefits, Mr. Chairman, what we have stated in the law are only copied from the OSG, and we do not want to be more than what the OGCC, the OSG, the PAO, and National Prosecution Service are receiving be more than that of what they are receiving. That is all, Mr. Chairman, and we will request that we'll be given a opportunity also to file a formal reply to all these objections of the OSG.
you will have that opportunity because the technical working group will be convened on Monday. So we will call all of you so that we can finesse the law, so that we can submit it as a committee report afterwards, after one more meeting.
Thank
So
you very
please,
much, Mr. Chairman.
please send your first team and put on your game face when we start fine-tuning the law that is before us today. In the meantime, I'd like to thank everyone. There's another committee meeting. There's another law that I have to tackle. I thank you all for your kindness. And as you heard, I am for the bill, for the adjustment of salaries, but we still have to do some fine-tuning on the matter. I thank the IBP for coming over, and your points were very, very well taken, very well received. And thank you for the information. So the technical working group will now meet on Monday. That will include all of you here at 10 o'clock on Monday over Zoom. All right? On that note, I will suspend this hearing for the technical working group on Monday. Attorney Babia, please take note and steer the organization of the meeting so we can finish this. I thank you, Justice Vega.
Thank you very much also, Mr. Chairman.
And I can see that grass does not grow on a busy street. You know what I mean. And certainly all of you, your kind comments are welcome, and thank you all for coming. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay ang Pilipinas, and I shall see you at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
This meeting on the committee of government of justice on the matter of the OGCC is hereby suspended until Monday. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.